time. But for me, December is that time, and a lot of it's connected to Christmas. And my grandmother died a few years ago, just about a week from now. And now her son, my uncle, of course, passed. And there's many other things I could list, but I won't, that have happened and have gone on in my life around this month. So there's no wonder this week in preparing for Sunday, I felt this sort of heaviness and weight. And sure enough, I got this phone call. Advent is a time that doesn't start with a joyful trumpet blast or an angel's appearing and saying, "Behold, I bring you glad tidings, good cheer, good news." We haven't gotten there yet. Advent doesn't start in a place of security and plenty. And though outside these walls, the busy shopping malls, the festive music, and the bright shiny decorations that we see all around us actually betray the spirit of Advent in a sense. Because Advent doesn't start with celebrations and good news. It starts rather in a place of terror, of desperation, and grief. Derek read for us a portion from the prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah was written in a time in which the people of God suffered a great deal. They were oppressed by empire. Many of them had been carted off to slavery. Many of them were allowed to practice their faith. Many of them struggled in poverty. Many weren't sure where their next meal would come from. And in this place in which the people of God, realizing that they brought this upon themselves, the prophet sort of explains through their disobedience to God, yet he voices on behalf of all of God's people the desperate cry, the authentic prayer. Tear open the heavens and come down. Tear open the heavens and come down, the prophet proclaims. It seemed as if God was afar off from them, distant, somewhere in the heavens and the skies, and the people needed God to be close, needed God to fix things, needed God to heal them, their hearts, their bodies, to restore them as a people, as a nation. It's a prayer not that unlike that of the psalmist in Psalm 80 and many of the Psalms, that if we were to distill the essence of those Psalms, they essentially say, "Oh God, help! Oh God, help!" I'm guessing a few of us have said that prayer at some point in our lives. It's an honest prayer, a desperate prayer. It is the tone in which Advent starts. Come. Come, Emmanuel. Come, God, be with us. Come, Lord Jesus. But then paired with these expressions to God of prayer, of desperation, we find in the gospel text today, as we do in every Advent, at the beginning of the season, often the first 2 weeks of Advent, we find what we would call an apocalyptic text. And apocalyptic texts have to do with end times, have to do with the coming, the return of Christ, which is another theme of Advent, where the church is invited to anticipate and to expect that Christ will return. That just as Christ came 2,000 years ago in an unexpected and surprising way, a helpless, vulnerable baby, so we wait and long for Christ to return. But the apocalyptic writings in the gospel we have today are rather frightening, really. Like the book of Revelation, if we were to read it without understanding its purpose or background, it sounds rather scary. Today's, for example, talked about the sun shining no more. No more light from the moon, the stars falling. And many other apocalyptic texts talk about natural disasters and many things happening that are terrible things. But it also says that the Son of Man, which is a term for Christ, for the Messiah, for Jesus, that he would come on the clouds with his angels. And for myself growing up, I grew up with this sense that also came with it the idea of the rapture. Some of you may be familiar with that term. It's not as widely believed in the Anglican Church, but it's something that I've grown up with. My understanding of it's changed over the years, but my sense of it growing up was very much how it's depicted in the Left Behind series, which maybe you've read in the books or seen the film. It goes something like this, that essentially, before all this calamity and natural disasters happen on the earth, that Jesus will come and sort of beam up or teleport Christians away. Those who are ready, those who are waiting. And they get to miss all these terrible things and be up in heaven. And then after all these terrible things happen, then Christ would come and reestablish his kingdom on earth. So as a child, I grew up with this notion, this belief that it could happen at any time. And yeah, we were really told that. We had sang songs about that. And there's a song I wish we'd all been writing from the 70s. Maybe some of you do that song? I don't know. I won't sing it for you, don't worry. But the story of the two men walking up the field, one taken, one left behind, that kind of thing. So you can imagine as a child when I would come home, expecting my house to be filled with my family, my parents, my three sisters, whoever, and only to find the house empty, that my mind would instinctively go to this place thinking, oh no, did I miss it? Did I miss the rapture? Or have all my family been taken away and I've been left behind? And it was a legitimate fear. Now usually reason would start to take over and I'd work my way through it and whatnot. But that thought did occur to me from time to time. And it was actually kind of a terrifying thought. But that's part of these apocalyptic stories and texts and beliefs that may not be comforting at first, but actually might elicit some fear and anxiety. The other image that goes with this and that I referenced in my mass media article is one taken from Matthew's Gospel, Matthew's version of this story. Now, Mark's version talks about the homeowner going away and never knowing when the homeowner is going to return. Well, Matthew's version talks about a thief coming in the night. That if the person knew that a thief was coming, then you would lock the doors and you would prepare. And so the story is likening Jesus coming to a thief. And in 1 Thessalonians, which we read a couple Sundays back, actually, that image is used again, that Jesus is coming like a thief in the night. Now, I don't know about you, but that is not a comforting image of Jesus for me. I like Jesus, the Good Shepherd. You know, who can kind of cuddle his sheep. You know, I like Jesus when he's seen as this great miracle worker and healer and profound teacher that inspires and challenges. I like those images for Jesus. I am not too comfortable with the image of Jesus as a thief. Anyone who's ever been robbed will tell you how terrifying an experience it is. And not simply because of the loss of one's possessions, but because of the loss of one's feeling of safety, of security, of privacy, and there's this feeling of violation. And it can be very difficult for people to recover from that experience and to not be fearful anymore. Because we have this sense, perhaps somewhat of an illusion, that everything is safe and sound and secure within our walls. So the idea that Jesus would come and break in, it's not one that I would immediately go to as a comforting, hopeful image. But I heard a really interesting interpretation from Lutheran pastor and author Nadia Bolz-Weber. And she's a fascinating take on this image of Jesus as a thief. She talks about Jesus as a holy thief who wants to steal from us those things that we'd be better off losing. She puts it this way. Perhaps during Advent, a season with pornographic levels of consumption, in which our credit card debts rise and our waistbands expand, the idea that Jesus wants to break in and jack some of our stuff is really good news. He could pickpocket the stupid junk in our houses, or abscond with our self-loathing or resentment. Maybe break in the middle of the night and take off with our compulsive eating or a love of money. That's how God works sometimes. Not through the things we are prepared for, but through the things we don't expect. I don't know about you, but there are things in my life and in my heart that I would do well to be without. Hurts, bitterness, resentments, prejudices. There's lots of things in our lives, I think, that can impede God's work of making us more and more like His Son, Jesus. We are told in Advent to watch, to wait, to be ready for the unexpected. Which is pretty funny, because I don't know how you can be ready for the unexpected. Yeah. That's how God comes. So maybe this image of Jesus coming as a holy thief, we could welcome that message. And we'd be mindful of those things cluttering up our interior lives that perhaps we need to be rid of. I've also ever encouraged your congregation, and I would do so for us as well. Many of us make Christmas lists. I know maybe we may feel we're older for that. I still do that because my family asks me for one. What do you need this year for Christmas? So make a little list. The kids, of course, are always all too excited to make their lists. But she said, what about instead of making Christmas lists this year, we make an Advent list of those things in which we would desire God to come and take from us? What are those things that we need God to deal with and to be rid of? Someone had mentioned at the 9:30, and I'll share this because you've probably heard the commercial. There's a commercial for a men's weight loss program, and it says if you would have done it on your own, you'd have done it already. If you could do it on your own, you'd have done it already. This idea that we need help. These things. These things that are cluttering and filling our lives, we need help dealing with. So maybe we can take some time in this busy season to stop, to reflect. Ask God to shine light of His presence inside our hearts and minds, that we might be able to know and name those things that we wish to be taken from us. And when we do so, may we find the holy thief faithful to come in and to bring God's light and life. Let us pray. Gracious God, in this holy season, help us to prepare our hearts. Help us to prepare our hearts for the surprising ways in which you come to us. Let us be mindful of those things that we wish to, or to be rid of. And Lord, may you come and take them from us, that we may bear more and more the image of your Son, the holy thief, in whose name we pray. Amen.